Okay, and we are back for another discussion. I do have a slight humming in the background because something turned on and I didn't really realize how loud that was. So hopefully it won't be that distracting. Hopefully I'll talk over it. I'm still dealing with my little bit of a ear upgrade there as far as my hearing. So I'll probably be shouting a little bit anyway because I still can't hear out of this ear. There'll be a lot of people that will talk about, I did hear that beeping. There'll be a lot of people that talk about different types of upgrades, and people will talk about eye upgrades. They'll talk about how, their vision will get really blurry. Some people will just have numerous things happening with their vision and their glasses aren't working and they take them off for a while. Because we do have to start disconnecting from our human realities, and there's different ways we do this. So I do want to kind of take that topic today, and we're going to explore that one a little bit. And one of the ways you will do that with is taking your eyes offline. So what your universe is going to do is it's going to take certain things offline for you. It can take your hearing offline, which this is probably the first time I've gone through this one where my hearing's kind of offline because of numerous stuff going on in this ear. It can take your eyes offline, which I did go through my eyes being offline around 2016, 2017 to where I kept getting issues with the eyes because we do have crystals in our eyes, and when they pop, they will kind of scratch your eyes. So I kept getting all these eye scratches, all these things going on with my eyes. And the more things that went on with my eyes, it was harder and harder to keep contacts in, and my glasses weren't updated, and I couldn't get a new prescription. And it was just a big thing I kind of constructed to where I went for like 6-7 weeks where I really just pretty much had blurry vision. And you might find that starts happening. Some people even go as far as having detached retinas if they don't have the issues with corrective vision, which your universe can play with a little bit, as far as playing with when your glasses are up to date and when they're not. I do see that happen to some people where they'll just have to live with the blurry vision for a while because your universe is trying to detach you from what you see. It's trying to detach you from looking outside and registering everything your physical eyes see as real. And it's trying to get you to see with your third eye. And that's really the most important part of the whole thing. It's trying to get you to see with your senses that are not your human senses. It's trying to get you into more of your precognitive senses. And a lot of times we don't really start to hone in on those. We don't really want to focus on those until something goes offline. So you're going to find that your hearing could go. And what you'll start hearing a lot of the tones in your ears, and a lot of people will correlate that to the tones of the universe. A lot of people I know will wear earplugs or have worn earplugs for months and months at a time to drown out everything else around them. And it tunes their body quicker. It'll tune your realities playing out around you. So by doing that, it will kind of segregate it out for you a little bit, and you'll just hear a lot of people kind of used to call it tinnitus, and you just hear the tones in your ears. But everything is related back to the light body. Everything we do is related back to the light body. Everything we do has to do with our soul trying to integrate in the body. Every human, condition, that's always what it's going to come back down to. So then we have to just figure out what's it trying to detach us from. Where am I overcompensating one way or the other? I'll always say that the eyes are not the windows to the soul. They're not really the windows to anything. They're just there, okay? You can see with your eyes, but what you see, you really have to look at what I'm saying, what's real and what's not real. What do I really believe? Because our realities construct and harden around us in the physical form because we put that much belief in them, whether it's our own personal belief or a belief of a collective that we hook up to. Even if we don't really believe, we hook up to that. And there's so many, you can watch so many documentaries on physics and all that says the table shouldn't really be the table. It really shouldn't be solid or real, but because I perceive it solid or real, it's solid or real. And that's kind of how our realities construct. And once they kind of get anchored in, it takes a while for them to deconstruct. And when we start going through that deconstruction phase of our human realities, we start kind of paring all that stuff out. It can take a long time, at a long linear time. And I don't like to get too much into linear time on the channel because it is a very human construct, but because we learn to kind of flow with time and kind of also operate outside of time, where time doesn't have we realize we have all the time we need as long as we're utilizing it for what's aligned. You know, we don't run out of time unless we start getting sidetracked and doing stuff that's not aligned for us to do. That's when we start losing time. You know, when a lot of people come into our field, we lose time. Time will collapse on you because everyone's spinning at a different rate. Your body's trying to keep up with that spin. It can't really flow in with time anymore because it's doing something else. When we're out around a lot of people, you're going to notice you don't have the hypersensitivity in a sense of everything going on in your field because your field's trying to overcompensate for everyone else's field. And that's not saying everyone else's field is spinning at a rate that's, you know, air quote wrong or something wrong with their field. It's just not your field spin. So the person with the highest field spin is going to try to hold up the entire, the entire field. Everyone then enters into your field, then you have to keep the whole thing going. So you're not going to feel as connected. You're not going to notice every little thing going on in your field. You're not going to feel when, you know, something happens over here. I mean, I can know when someone calls because it'll just flash in my, you know, I'll just pick it up in my field. I don't have to go look at my phone. I know that the call came in and I missed it, or I don't have to hear the phone. Those are the kind of things you just can start to feel and notice, and it's a very natural way to be. But to get there, we have to kind of start exiting out of our old realities, and you're going to find you're going to probably do multiple versions of each one of these. You know, we'll have some where we get ejected from the reality very quickly. We'll have some where we choose to leave the reality. We'll have some where just the whole thing sort of just crumbles down around us and there's no reality left to either get thrown out of or walk away from because it just doesn't exist anymore. And depending on your connection with the reality, your universe is going to use, which is just higher aspects of you, it's going to use different things and different ways to get you out, right? You know, it's not going to be the same every time because every reality you're going to have a different through to, in a sense. You're going to have a different way you feel about it. And if you have a different way you feel about it, your universe has got to get creative about how it's going to get you out of it. But when it's time for you to get out and it's time for you to start disconnecting, because you can't connect inside when you're so distracted by outside. You know, it's impossible for you to connect inside of yourself when you're so distracted with everything going on outside of you. And that's what our human aspects do. Our human aspect gets so enthralled in everything around us. It doesn't really care what's going on inside of us. It's a distraction technique. But it's kind of what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to distract us. You know, it's not supposed to keep us... it's not supposed to allow us to go inside. That is not where it wants us to go. It's never going to want us to go there. Its whole purpose is to keep us kind of looking at everything else. You know, don't look over here, look over here. You don't want to, don't look at that. You don't want to go inside and look at anything. You just want to look straight ahead. What's going on outside of you? So the universe will get creative on how it takes these things away. So some of us, which I was one of these, where or sometimes our jobs will get ripped, we'll lose our jobs suddenly. I had a couple of those happen when I was exiting certain realities. Some I knew were coming, some I didn't know were coming. Some I chose to exit myself. Others were kind of just faded away. And when we come to the fade away, it's kind of like the slow fade where you can just see the reality moving farther and farther away because we're no longer matching the frequency of the reality. So as our vibration starts to raise, we notice that certain realities just kind of start having that slow fade out. People we used to spend time with all the time, we don't spend as much time with anymore. People who we lived next door to for 5, 6, 7 years, all of a sudden everyone starts moving away because the reality itself, our vibration has gotten to a point where the aspect that they mirrored back to us is no longer our dominant aspect. It's an aspect that's on our way out. It's an aspect perhaps we've completely transcended. And when we do that, these things go away. These people go away. These realities go away. If we're playing in these realities at work, that job will go away. Or you might get moved to a different location for a different job. Or you saw during COVID, what happened with a lot of the collectors is they got removed from certain human distorted realities and kind of got plunked into other ones. Because one thing we did learn through COVID, the COVID realities, and all that was very kind of divinely set up by all of our universe is kind of working in tandem, because when COVID came online, everyone kind of got out in a sense, everyone was kind of pushed out of their realities. They were pushed home, so you had one or two things happen there. Either if you'd invested a lot of time in the relationships around your home, you could see where you could see different parts of unique consciousness coming through, I think, in a lot of those things where everyone was kind of working together. If you had not spent a lot of time in your home, and then you notice all the distortions going on there. And normally it was probably a little bit of both. There were some ways people could work together, some ways it was very distorted. You saw a lot of people either come together or break up during that period of time, because anything that was distorted and was not aligned for the next part of their journey was going to have to go. Now, you can also see on the flip side is as their vibration raised, as they get out of that work environment, which we don't really realize how much something weighs us down until we get away from it. We don't realize how much it affects our vibration until we get out of it, because when we're in it, we our body can't get to a higher vibration. So until we're away from it, we can't really feel the freedom from it. We have to continue to kind of go back in, come back out, go back in, come back out. Because part of it in the beginning, we're not really ready to leave. I mean, COVID was a very absolute, in a sense, it didn't give people choices. A lot of these realities that went bye-bye during those years was because they've been held into too long, and their universes weren't going to tolerate it anymore. So if people who had already done a lot of detaching of realities kind of had an easier road in a way, because they had already on a micro level disconnected from a lot of their distorted realities. So when the bigger collectives went through it, they were going to go through it again. I'd already gone through it to a certain amount, but when the collectives went through it, I went through it again, because I was still, even on a DNA level, attached up to that collective. So as soon as they started moving out of the realities and they started having to detach from things, then that's when, for me, I had to detach more. I could feel more of, I don't even really like to call it humanness or humanity, because human and humanity are two completely different, things. We have a love for humanity, and your higher aspects has love for humanity, but you don't have a love for humans. The human aspect of us, we don't have a love for, in a sense. So that doesn't mean we don't accept it, and we can love it for what it is, but we don't really enjoy, that might be a better word, we don't really enjoy being around other people living in a human aspect, because it's such a distorted aspect that once you transcend so much of yours, and transcending it, meaning it doesn't really go anywhere, you don't make your decisions from that aspect anymore. That aspect is not the one where you make your decisions from. That aspect is not your go-to aspect. It's not your main one. It's not the one you're going to listen to. It's not the one to control anymore. You can hear it from time to time. You can hear it when it has a fit, when it doesn't like something, when it's going through one of its moments. But at the end of the day, it's not the one in charge anymore. And when you start being around people again who that's what's in charge, it's very discombobulating to your field. And you start to see kind of, how far you come to exit out of certain things. Some stuff, it just doesn't bring you joy anymore, and that can be very discombobulating a lot of times, because we don't really know where to set. To me, this happened more in the beginning of my process, and I've seen it happen lately, but I can kind of take it for what it is now. But when it first started happening to me back, around 8 or 9, 10 years ago, when I was kind of exiting out of a lot of, my job kind of transitioned at the time to be completely at home. So I really had no connection, and really not that much to do with the job. Not that much going on to do. So I was kind of in this, but it was what I needed for the next part of my journey, where I could spend a lot of time internally. But the disconnected from the external, you will kind of get this, it's almost like a detox. And it's not just, it's an emotional detox, it can be a physical detox. Normally they go hand in hand. You might have the emotional first and then the physical. Sometimes you might have your body go through a big expansion and a big raise in your vibration, and then it has to purge out. Or right before it can really step up the body vibration, you'll have a great purge of a lot of stuff. As far as not feeling well, throwing up or and a lot of that had to tie into COVID too. So you had a lot of people raising their physical vibration along with everything's coupled together. You know, it's all tied together. It's not like we can separate out for discussion, because there's no other way to really discuss it if we don't kind of pull it apart. And I always tell people to pull everything apart. You want to pull it apart. You want to really be able to get into what created the reality. You want to really look at your part in it, because it's your reality. You know, we created our shit. Whether we want to own it or not, we still created it. We were still the ones that went through it. We were still the ones that picked through it. It's no one else's stuff but ours. And when we try to sit there and kind of put it on someone else in a sense, and act like it was someone else who did it, that's when we go back into our back into the human aspect, trying to blame someone else for the mess we're in. You can see so many people, and we did the same thing. Sometimes it's easier to pick it out when you see people doing it now, but you can go back and see where we all did the same thing. We would all wall ourselves into realities that had no legs, that weren't going to go anywhere. But because we couldn't see the next one, we're going to entrench into this one. Even though it's kind of crumbling around us, we're still going to tie it up. Let me just kind of try to trench in here, even though I know this foundation is not solid and it's probably going to crumble at some point, because we can't see the next one. And when you get into going into your higher soul, more soul-aligned realities, and you know, and technically every reality you're going to go in is aligned to something. It might be aligned to clearing. Well, everything's really aligned to clearing, but it might be aligned to a human want, and to show you don't really need that, but it's aligned to something. It might not be aligned to the highest of the highest, but it's aligned to something. It might not be soul aligned. It might be human aligned. Then we have to look at a lot of people there's confusion on why certain realities come through. And if this is soul aligned, why did it crumble? The crumble is the soul aligned part. But the reality we created to get there was human aligned. That's why it crumbled. Everything you're going to call forth is aligned to something you're transmitting out. Whether it's you're transmitting it out from your human aspect or you're transmitting it out from your higher aspects. But in the beginning, we don't have a clear signal. We don't even realize what we're transmitting. We don't even realize what we're thinking half the time, because we get so bogged down on everything else. We can't really even comprehend what we're thinking. You know, we can't really dive into how we really feel about something, because we don't know how we feel about something. In the beginning, we look at how everybody else feels about something, and that's how we feel about it. You know, we kind of divide our own party lines, whether that is political lines or it's just the collectives that you hang around with, the collectives you link up to. We're going to divide on certain lines because that's what we're used to doing. You know, we're not used to how we feel about it. And we really saw that usher in a lot when social media ushered in how everyone else feels about something. You know, it's so interesting for me when I'd see other people want to ask everyone's opinion on something, and then when they got everyone's opinion, they didn't like the opinion. But it's like, if you open yourself up to ask, to get everyone else's opinion, you know, then you have to be prepared for the answer. If you don't want the answer, don't ask the question. And that's one of what our human will do. It doesn't really want the answer, so it doesn't really want to ask the question. You know, what is going on with my realities? Why am I being forced out of certain ones? So even when we get into cancel culture, that's another way to see how people get pushed out of reality, just completely tossed out. A lot of times you see this happening with people who might not have left on their own. Anyone who had some degree of success in the human realities, which would be deemed as human success, whether it be fame, money, you know, success at some point, they don't want to leave on their own. You know, they don't want to let those things go. So they kind of have to be tussled out in a sense, because they got in a way too comfortable in those realities. They got too comfortable thinking that no matter what they did, everything was gonna be fine. And as collectives have shifted, and as all the collectives start to shift, you go from one extreme to the other. At one point, everything's tolerable, and then on the other end, nothing is. And you teeter-totter back and forth. You see this in the collectives. You're going to see it in your own reality, where if you never stood up for yourself about anything, all of a sudden you're going to stand up for yourself about freaking everything. You know, you don't care what the fuck it is. You're going to stand up and say, no, I want hot French fries. You know, before you didn't say anything. And it seems like a minute thing, but you'll start to see yourself standing up for everything because you never stood up for anything before. So you kind of teeter the completely opposite direction. But then eventually you can bring it all back into balance again. But we kind of have to negate out, in a sense, all the stuff we did on the other end. We have to bring that kind of that abacus back into balance again. You know, we have to balance out the beads. And we do that when we get into a soul down realities where it can take so many years of working for humanity instead of working against humanity. And when we're in our human aspect, we work against humanity because humanity is a collective love for each other, right? Our human aspect doesn't have that. Our human aspect has no love for anyone else but itself. It's a very self-centered aspect. It all revolves around itself. You know, it is kind of there's no one else in its universe but it. Every decision we make is about us. Everything we do is about us. Even if we try to take it and spin it to where it's not about us, it's still going to be about us. And the COVID realities showed us so much of that, where you saw one extreme or the other. You saw it bringing some people's humanity through because that's what they needed to go through and where they were at in their process. And you saw other people where they were clearing more of their scarcity and lack programming, where they didn't have enough of anything. So everyone's hoarding everything, which then just, it kept getting more and more down the line. Everything else became scarce because that's what we create the whole bottleneck ourselves. Because we can't look at anyone else, especially when it gets extreme, and think of other people. Because that is not what our human does. So when we start exiting out of realities, and like I said, you're going to see them go in a lot of different ways. You're going to see yourself trying to realign different ones over and over and over again. And until you get so damn frustrated, you just don't care anymore because you can't get it aligned. Because everyone in the reality has to want to align it. It can't be one of these things where one person aligns the reality. You know, it can't be one of these things where only one person wants it to be aligned and nobody else really cares about what's going on in the reality. It has to be a very focused alignment, and I'm going to break that down a little bit because it's not even a focused alignment so much as it is you have to be able to look at it from all different consciousnesses in a sense. You have to look at it from the people in the reality. You know, how is this gonna benefit them? Not on a human level, because a lot of things we'll do, someone in their human aspect won't understand why we had to do that. You know, why are you doing what you're doing? Because we can see the bigger picture in it. You know, when you're seeing from your higher aspects, you're seeing from a higher consciousness than what your body's setting in. You know, you can align the reality, but to align it, you have to be able to see all facets of it. And when you're in it, and you're in the consciousness of that reality, you can only see one facet of it. You can't see the whole thing. So technically you can't align it because you only see your part of it. You know, you can't see it from 100 different other aspects, and you can't see from all the higher aspects of yourself. Why did this turn out this way? You know, why is this happening the way this is happening? Why isn't this working out the way I wanted it to work out? Why is this all haywire? I don't understand what's going on. Why is everything has gone haywire here? Because we can't really align it. So there'll be some realities where in the beginning they just kind of get taken out, and they get taken out because we can't align them. They're distorted. And we have not embodied in enough of our soul to even be able to try. So some you'll know you just have to walk away from. Some you'll know it's going to collapse on its own. I'm just going to ride it all the way down. And you can set up markers for yourself in those realities that if it's a job that you know you kind of want to leave, but you can see where there could be an exit somewhere, maybe down the road in 6 months, or down the road in 8 months, or maybe a year. And you could say, okay, I know it's not aligned. I used to do this all the time. I know it's not aligned, but you know, be kind to me. You know, like, universe, be kind to me. I know this shit's not aligned. And you can tell because it knocks you off your center. You know, but there might be a higher purpose. There's a higher purpose for you to be there in a sense. It might be paying the bills for now. And for what you have to do, that's one thing you don't have to be concerned about right now. You know it's not aligned long term. You know you're in a situation that it's not going to be aligned long term. But we can start to see where just, you know, I can see where there will be an out here. Or when it's ready to go out, I'm not going to fight the exit. And that was one of the agreements I had with one of the last more, I guess, linear job I had about 5 or 6 years ago, where I knew after so many years it was going to eventually come to an end where there'd be nothing else to do there. You know, the work would be done. But I chose to write it. I mean, I didn't want to. I was so bored. And my human was so bored in it. I wanted to go on to something else. You kind of always want to rush the next part of the journey. But I kind of made a deal, you know, with my universe. I was like, I won't fight it now, and I won't fight it when it ends. You know, I'm not going to try to stay longer. I'm not going to go look for another job in that arena anymore. I'm going to be done with the whole thing. I'm going to ride all of these human jobs out, in a sense. I'm going to ride it out here. I'm not going to go looking for something else to ride it a few more years. I'm going to ride this out, but when it's done, I'm not going to fight it being done. I'm just going to let it end. And it took maybe another, I don't know, 6 or 7 months before it finally did end after that. And that'd be going on for years. You know, it was a long exit. It was a long curtain call for that job, a very long curtain call for that job. But when it was done like that. And it was so quickly, because we always kind of have our human ego is so large that I see so many people say, oh, and I remember I'd say the same thing, like, oh, I'll never be able to get out of this. I'm so ingrained in the whole thing, and oh, I could never leave that job or never leave that relationship. I would just be, you know, no one would know what to do. You know, I'm so priceless. Everyone would just be so shocked, you know, what's going to happen to everybody. And then when it's over, and no one seems to care. Because we build it up to where it's kind of that belief we build up that, you know, I'm so ingrained in this reality, I can't get out. But I will tell you, when your soul's done with that reality, you will get out. And you can get out kicking and screaming and get dragged out, or you can just walk out and be like, okay, well, I guess I'm done now. But it's not attached to that physical marker. It's the energetic you're done. You know, the soul is done with that reality. You now have something else to go on and do for your ascension, for the next part of embodying in more of your soul, to getting your vibration up higher. This is now a hindrance. Before, it served a purpose. The purpose of this is now done. You've energetically got to a point where now, if you stay in this reality, it's now going to hurt. It's now going to start hampering your vibration. It's going to keep it at a certain point. You have to be able to grow past that. So a lot of the realities, it's just they kind of have lived their life, you know, and we can see that. But when we're in our human aspect and all our human realities we created, we never saw the ending coming, no matter how obvious the ending was coming. And now when you get into your higher line realities, you start trying to align your realities on a soul level, which can take years because you have to get through all the muck of the other ones first. You know when they're coming to an end. Usually when you get in the reality, you know when the exit is. You know that, okay, this is 9 months, this is going to be a year, because you can see that far off. And it's not that you really share that. And we talked a little bit about that in another one I did, about counting your chickens before they hatch. We don't talk about that kind of stuff, because the minute we talk about it, we're shifting our vibration about, oh, this will be done in this long. Our ego comes into it. You know, because maybe we don't love the reality we're in at this moment. It's a purpose for us to be here, but maybe it's not the sexy one we wanted. Maybe we wanted to go on to do something else first. So when we're kind of in the middle of that, we kind of have to wait for those realities to really anchor in. You know, we have to wait for the reality to come in. We don't really mention it, even though you can see the ending far ahead. But when you're in the human realities, it's funny, because here, when you're in your higher aligned realities, you're at a higher consciousness, your body's at a higher vibration, you can see the teeniest little thing shifts in the reality, and you know that's the swan song for the reality. It might take another 6 to 9 months for it to completely close out, but you can see it coming. You know, you can just see it coming. You can feel it just energetically being done. Things that bothered you don't bother you anymore. Things that used to spin you up in the reality, you don't care anymore. So you're through the clearings of that, what that reality was providing for you. None of that really affects you anymore. You kind of get in a groove with the reality. You kind of start enjoying your time in the reality. Usually by the time you accept the reality's done. Because the whole point was getting you to accept the reality and work through what you had to work through by being here. And that's why a lot of the realities we can end up in, our human doesn't like them, because it makes us have to deal with things. Whether you're dealing with, you know, relationships that you had to go back and deal with because you had not dealt with them before. Whether you're dealing with parents, whether you're dealing with siblings, whether you're dealing with old just stuff, even if you're dealing with stuff when you were a child, your inner child. Because we don't really go back and play in the past stuff. It's just knowing that these are things that we have to deal with to move on to the next thing. You know, things we're holding on to that we have to be able to clear to move on to the next thing. And sometimes we can clear them energetically. Sometimes our universe is going to plop us in a situation where, okay, now you got to deal with all this because now you got to go on to something else. And maybe you might want to deal with this 4 years from now, but you won't have the time then to deal with this. You know, so you got to do this now. And it might not be the reality you wanted, but now it's a reality you have. Because we have so much human judgment on the realities we get plopped into sometimes, because they're not the ones we wanted. Our human wanted a certain ones because we're still judging them by a human standard. So once we kind of start pulling out of that, we're not judging about the human standard anymore. We're trying to really look at these realities and say, okay, I'm here now. and let me see, why am I here? Well, now we kind of start our fact-finding mission. It's like you're in a video game. Okay, why am I here? Let me start looking around for the clues, because I've laid out clues. Your whole reality, everything in your reality, you're going to be laying out clues to be able to see, why am I here? You know, what is the purpose here? It's never going to be the human purpose why you think you're here. You know, it's always going to be that deeper clearing, touching other people. Maybe you just need to be there for a while because other people's vibration needs to raise. And it gives you a place to set for 6 months, because the next place you have to go to, that reality is not teed up yet. That reality might take another 6 months to a year before you're going to go to that space or go to that, wherever that is, and it's not ready yet. So now you're going to sit here and deal with some of this stuff that you kind of had on the back burner for years that you didn't want to deal with it. Soul line realities mean dealing with our shit, you know, and it doesn't mean they're not beautiful and exquisite, because they are. But there are some days when you have to deal with stuff. You have to deal with stuff you didn't want to deal with. And those are the times when you're like, boy, did I really sign up for this? But once you start working through it, you understand how much that stuff was holding our vibration to a certain point. You know, how much that stuff is kind of keeping us in a certain spot, because we weren't really ready to move on. You know, we weren't really ready to let a lot of stuff go, especially when you go into blood stuff, as far as a blood family. It can be a big one for a lot of people. You know, whether your parents are in the past or they're still here, siblings, all that stuff can be kind of a big thing we don't want to deal with, you know, because there's so much human judgment around dealing with that type of stuff. You know, I had a friend that would say that she was a doctor, and she was like, she hated seeing people at Thanksgiving or Christmas, because she always had to carry tissues with her, because everyone was either crying because they didn't have a family or crying because they had to go home to their family. And she said that everyone was so miserable in those times of the year, because technically that was when we deal with it. You know, our human would say, okay, you have to go home during these times of the year, and you're going to have to work through it. You're going to have to drudge through some of this programming, and there'll probably be blow-ups, and people are going to get pissed off, people are going to be upset. But that's how we dealt with it, you know, on a human level. But how long is that going to take? You know, we're going to work through this over 30, 40 years until those people pass on. And then we know, okay, we're energetically done with that, because they're not here anymore. That was kind of when they're gone, we knew we were finished. Or do we just deal with it? Do you just go immerse yourselves in it and get it done? So you can then move on to something else, instead of spreading it out over hundreds of years. You know, well, it feels like 100 years when you're in those time frames and doing kind of that cosmic dance with stuff, where you really just don't take it on. You know, so when we start looking at the construction of things, look at how things deconstructed. Look at the signs that it was ending, but we didn't want it to. Look at where we kept trying to go back to the reality because we didn't want it to end yet. Look at in your human aspect, when you didn't even realize what you were creating, all the signs that the reality, I mean, it would be the biggest signs of reality couldn't continue. It was like everyone could see the red flags, but the people in the reality, right? We were like, no, it's fine, and it's red flags all over the place. But like I said, when you get into your soul line realities, one thing shifts. Energetically, you just feel the shift, and you're like, oh yeah, this is going to be done. Because I can feel that in so much longer, this is going to start hampering where I am. And your universe is always going to put one thing above everything else, and that's your vibration, your body's vibration, and your consciousness. And everything will go around that. Your body's vibration is going to suffer to set in a reality. The reality will be removed. You might hold on to it as long as you try to and suffer trying to do it. But in the end, whether it takes 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, 15 years, when it gets to kind of DEFCON 1 on that, your universe will pull you out of it. Because it's always going to put your body vibration over anything else in that reality. Because you can't really do anything for humanity when your body's vibration is low. You know, I'm going to check my chat really fast. Oh, hello. So if anyone has any questions, I'll take them now. Your body's vibration is always going to trump everything else. Always. Your universe is not going to let you set in anything when it gets to that point. You know, and some people will say, well, I couldn't leave that reality until I physically started getting ill. And then I had to leave because I was so physically sick I couldn't stay. And you would hear that even in human realities that we created, we would hear that. You know, and when I say human realities, I mean when we were in our human consciousness, we didn't even know what was going on. We're just creating the most distorted shit ever, and we don't even know what we're creating. And we don't even care what we're creating. We're just creating it, you know. We don't know. We don't care about anybody else. We're just throwing it against the wall. We're like children, you know, just keep creating the most distorted stuff and wondering, well, that one didn't work. Let me go over here and create another one that looks similar, but I'm going to convince myself it's totally different, and we're going to do it again. Because it's the energetics that created the reality. That's what was important there. You know, it's the energy that you created it with. That's going to be the telltale sign of that reality. Did it come from purity? Did it come from love? Did it come from, you know, lack, greed, blame, shame, judgment, validation? Why are we, or something we're trying to fill within ourselves, you know? Some issue that we are trying to use someone else to kind of help us. I don't like the word help there. Using another reality that we're trying to, let me take this a different way. It's just to kind of end the point on this one. People are there to help us work through our stuff. That's the only reason people are there. We can try to paint it as Cinderella's story. We can paint it whatever we want to. We can make it as romantic as we want to make it. We can make it, you know, like every Friends episode we ever saw. People are there to help us work through our stuff. If we don't need people there to work through it, they won't be there. Okay? When you're in the clearing, when we're clearing, and we're always going to be clearing, that's why people are around. People are what ignite us to work through our stuff. We don't even know sometimes we have stuff till someone says something to us, and then we're like, well, I didn't even realize I felt that way till they said it to me. People are always going to speak our fears back to us. People say something and it gets to us, and as a human we'll always say, well, that's their stuff, that's not my stuff. No, if it gets to us, it's our stuff. If you have any reaction at all, even the most minutest level, it belongs to us. It doesn't belong to them. They're just showing you still hold that. You're still showing us that we feel that way about something. So people are always going to mirror it back to us. They're going to show us different aspects of ourselves. They're going to show us, you know, they're either going to be a higher aspect of us, they're going to be an aspect we're trying to transcend. They're the biggest telltale signs in your reality of what's going on. Because you will go through realities where there's nobody there but you. Because you're really trying to connect within yourself. And then when people start coming back in again, you're in another part of your ascension journey. Because now you're going to have to deal with people. Can you deal with people, see what they're trying to show you without going into your ego, going into your human aspect? It's the same thing. And playing in the human stuff again. You know, if we set the tone, if we go into reality from our highest aspect, you'll be surprised how everything will kind of rearrange around that. You'll get a higher aspect of those people. You'll get a different reality. You'll get a different reality than you've ever gotten before, because energetically we've shifted the reality. They're now in our field. Now, can they hold that higher aspect? It depends. It depends on where they are in their journey, or can they just maybe hit it sometimes? Then they go back to what I kind of call your kind of your base setting, in a sense. You know, you're going to have a base setting on where you're going to set at until you transition that one. And that's why it takes a lot of time to really get to know a person, because they're going to show you the highest aspects of them, their most beautiful aspects. But that might not be the aspect they live from every day. That's just one they might hit over here and there, but that's not the one that they have embodied. You know, they're still embodying their human aspect. And that's the one at the end of the day, when stuff goes, and you can always tell, when things get rough, a human living from their human aspect is going back to that aspect, and they will screw you over. And I've seen that time and time again, playing with people, you know, being in realities with people who still are predominantly in their human aspect, that when it gets rough, they're going to go back to their human aspect, and they're going to be in it for themselves, and they will screw you over. So you kind of see that coming a lot of times. But like I said, there's a purpose. Sometimes we're in realities. We have to decide if we have fulfilled our purpose, or if we're now just hanging on because we don't want to let it go. So, all right, I think that's a good ending for today. So I will see everyone next time. Bye.